If you have a finished or partially finished basement and you're wondering what to do about what's overhead, well, a suspended or drop ceiling could be the answer. There are several advantages to a drop ceiling. It conceals plumbing and electrical, yet gives access to pipes and wires if it's needed for repair or maintenance. And it gives the basement a finished look, brightens everything up. Today I'll be installing this drop ceiling using Armstrong Ceiling's QUICKHANG kit. It has everything I'll need to install 64 square feet of framework, into which the ceiling panels will go. A suspended ceiling has three components: a molding or rail that goes around the walls of the room, a grid that drops into the rail, and panels that drop into the grid. Now, this is the wall rail or wall molding, and there are a couple things to keep in mind when installing this. First, it needs to be at the proper height because that determines the height of the ceiling, and it needs to be level all the way around the room. Using a carpenter's square, I measure down from the bottom of the floor joist and make a mark to indicate where I want the top of the wall rail. It's important to come down low enough to clear any obstructions, yet high enough to maintain adequate ceiling height. Extending a level line all the way around the room can be done using a 4-foot level, or by measuring down at 2 points on a wall, driving in a nail, and striking a chalk line. The fastest and most accurate way to establish a level line around a room is with a laser level. Now, these can be rented or even purchased for under $50. Now, even though it doesn't look like it, this is a concrete wall with a vinyl sheet over it, which is part of my basement waterproofing system. Now, when it comes to attaching this channel to concrete, there are a few different ways it can be done. Now, honestly, the easiest way to put this railing up would be with two people, but since I'm working alone today, I'm going to have to take a different approach. So I've put some tape on this, and I'm going to line it up on the laser line, and then just press the tape in position. It's important here to align the top of the wall channel with the laser line. Adjacent pieces of rail are butted together. This is a masonry bit suitable for drilling into concrete. It has a wear-resistant carbide tip welded on the end. While I could use a regular drill, the job will go much faster with a hammer drill that pounds as it rotates. Into that hole will go this Tapcon concrete screw or anchor. It can be driven in with a regular drill fitted with a nut driver. From here forward, I'm going to be wearing gloves to protect myself from possible sharp edges on the metal parts I'll be working with. This is a section of main support beam that's designed to be suspended from the joists. More about this in a moment. When working with concrete basement walls, this main beam can be substituted for the wall rail and simply hung from wire hooks, avoiding the need for concrete fasteners. For drywall, the rails can be attached to the framing. First, locate and mark the wall studs using an electronic stud finder. Then, place the rail in position, mark the stud location, pre-drill a clearance hole, then simply attach the rail to the studs using wallboard screws. Now, a suspended or dropped ceiling really consists of three components: the main beams, which carry the weight of the ceiling and are suspended from the ceiling joists, with the second item, hooks right through these holes like that. And then the grid is further divided with these cross tees, which snap into the beam. When it comes to layout, full tiles are generally centered in the room. This leaves a border around the edges that will require partial or cut tiles. The main beams are installed first at 4-foot intervals. The beams on the end, though, need to be installed at a distance from the wall that is equal to the width of the border. In this case, the width of the border is 10 inches. I measure out that distance from the wall and mark the joists. Then drive in a nail on the 10-inch mark. Using a chalk line, I snap a line across all the joists at the point where the beam will intersect. Then extend the mark up the side of the joist. The Armstrong QUICKHANG system features this adjustable bracket that eliminates the need to cut and twist the typical hanging wire. More about this feature in a moment. I position the elongated hole in the center of the bracket over the mark on the side of the joist and drive in 2 temporary tabs. The bracket is permanently attached using either nails or a single screw. This grid hook slips through the bottom diamond-shaped hole in the bracket. The bracket is then squeezed, allowing the hook to be pushed upward, rotated, and passed through the upper hole in the bracket. The grid hook can be moved up or down by squeezing the spring tabs and sliding the hook through the bracket. It's locked in any position simply by releasing the tabs. If the hook is too long, the upper portion can simply be bent over. On walls that are parallel to the beams, we've allowed for the ceiling border by placing the end beams 10 inches from the wall. But what about the walls that are perpendicular to the beams? To make the proper width border here, we need to mark the beams 10 inches back from the first cross-T slot. Then, using aviation snips, cut the beams to length. This will put the first cross-T in the proper position to create a 10-inch border. The cut end of the beam is placed on the wall channel, while the remaining portion is supported by the hooks we installed earlier. The QUICKHANG kit comes with 6-foot beams that are snapped together to create beams long enough to cross the entire room. To ensure the beams are straight and level, I clip a string line to each end and then adjust the beam up or down by squeezing the spring clamps on the bracket and sliding the hook until the beam is aligned with the string. Since the beams are installed at 4-foot intervals, I measure and mark that distance on the joists, drive in a nail, strike the chalk line, extend the chalk line up the side of the joist, install the hanging brackets, and hang the beams. I repeat this process until all the beams are in place. With the beams up, I can now begin installing the cross-Ts, which snap into the slots on the main beams or slots on the cross-Ts themselves. Once the entire gridwork is up, I check to ensure the frames are square by measuring the 2 diagonals. The 2 measurements should be the same. We've got the gridwork up for all of our full tiles. Now we want to put it up for the smaller border tiles that go around the edge of the room. Our border is 10 inches wide, so we'll be cutting our cross-T material into 10-inch long sections and slipping one end into the slot on the intersecting cross-T and setting the other on the wall rail. With the framework complete, I can now begin installing the full tiles by tipping them at a slight angle, pushing them through the opening, then dropping them into the gridwork. This part of the job goes quite quickly. All of our full tiles are up, so let's start on the border tiles that'll be around the edge of the room. I confirm the width of the border tiles as 10 inches. Then set up my cutting station by placing a piece of fiberboard on the work surface and the tile on top. I'll be using a breakaway utility knife to both mark and cut the tiles. For a clean cut, it's important to use a sharp knife and make several shallow passes. The fiberboard underneath keeps the blade from getting dull as I cut through. This tile has a rabbet or step along the edge that allows the tile to sit slightly below the framework, providing a pleasing visual detail. I'll need to create this step detail on the cut edge of the border tile, first by making a vertical cut halfway through the tile, and then a horizontal cut along the edge. This allows the tile to drop fully into position. Now you may have noticed that I have a home fire sprinkler head in this corner of the room. So I've bored a hole through the tile directly beneath the sprinkler. I'll have the sprinkler contractor come by and extend the pipe so that the sprinkler head will be below the ceiling. You know, of all the ceiling projects that I've done, I can't think of one that had a more dramatic difference between the before and the after.